Ella and I had a grand time, at least I had a grand time having Ella. Her task was to photograph and do a lot of cataloging work on our sewing tools collection so that I could know what I wanted to use in the collection. We have a whole lot of sewing tools, a few on display in the gallery, but also more in the study gallery drawers. So please make sure you go see those. And then when she was done with that, I sent her to photograph the doll clothes so that we had a good record of what we had there, because I knew she had been working on dolls. So it's great to have her come back here to talk about those. Ella Jones is the Curatorial Assistant for the Textile Museum Collection at the George Washington University Museum and the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C. In 2022, Ella earned her Master of Arts degree in Decorative Arts and Design History with a concentration in Costume and Textile Studies from the Corcoran School of the Arts and Design at George Washington University. During her final semester, she interned for me at the DAR Museum, where she assisted, as I said already, with the cataloging of the museum's collection of sewing tools and doll clothes in preparation for Sewn in America. She returned to the DAR in November of 2023 to help photograph objects for the exhibition catalog. Her presentation, Sewing in Miniature, Fashion Dolls in Early America, expands on the first chapter of her master's thesis, Crisis and Couture, the commercial and cultural influence of fashion dolls during periods of socio-political and economic strife. Ella holds a BA degree in studio art with a minor in art history from Kenyon College.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you to Alden and the rest of the Sewn in America Planning Symposium Committee for having me here today. My name is Ella Jones, and as Alden said, I currently work as the Curatorial Assistant for the Textile Museum Collection at George Washington University here in DC. But 2 years ago, during my last semester of grad school, I interned under Alden in preparation for the Sewn in America exhibition. And as an intern, besides my primary job of cataloging and researching the museum's collection of sewing tools, like this thread winder here, Alden also tasked me with photographing the museum's collection of doll clothes. And this was really exciting for me because at the time I was completing my master's thesis, which Alden read the very long title of to you, but I promise it's an engaging read despite the long title. My presentation today is an expansion on the first chapter of my thesis, which focuses on the cultural significance of fashion dolls in America during the Revolutionary and Civil Wars. The Sewn in America exhibition is an exploration of the significant role that sewing and needlework has played in the American female experience. And what I hope to do today is to demonstrate how dolls fit into that story. First, it's important to establish the definition of a fashion doll in its historical context. So if you were a child in the 90s and early 2000s like me, you might picture these ladies when you hear the phrase fashion doll. I wore Barbie pink today just to underscore that. However, while today the term fashion doll is pretty synonymous with children's toys, historical fashion dolls were not necessarily intended for play. They originated as luxury objects that facilitated the exchange of fashion trends and traditions in the Western world, long before glossy magazines, television, and eventually the internet became the dominant transmitters of popular culture. From the late 14th century through the 18th century, the fashion doll played a role in diplomatic relations between European royalty. Aristocrats would gift fashion dolls to each other as diplomatic gestures, and heads of state collected and displayed these luxury objects as symbols of political power. Upon receiving a fashion doll, noble women had their seamstresses translate the doll's clothing into a life-size garment. Some dolls served primarily as decorative objects rather than just instructional tools because of their luxurious materials and high price tags. Fashion dolls had several names, including Pandora dolls. They were sometimes called mannequins, and the French for fashion doll, poupées de mode. Pardon my pronunciation. Some royals even made their own dolls as artistic projects. The doll pictured here was created by Catherine of Sweden and her mother in the 1590s. You can see from this portrait that I think has been cut off, unfortunately, of an unknown Swedish princess, that the doll's clothing pretty accurately reflects the fashions of the time. So you may be wondering how all of this relates specifically to American history, as we are at the DAR. Well, in the 18th century, fashion dolls acted as disseminators of English culture in the American colonies. Colonists would look back at fashion dolls as indicators of the latest trends in England. French fashion dolls were also imported to the colonies as well. These two dolls are known as Queen Anne style dolls, named for the English queen who ruled from 1702 to 1714. This style of fashion doll was popular in the 18th century and is recognizable by its jointed wood body and wood-carved faces. Sometimes dressmakers hosted the viewings of these dolls and charged clients a fee to view them, as evident from an advertisement in a 1733 issue of the New England Weekly Journal. The advertisement announces the arrival of a doll from England at a local dressmaker's shop. The doll, referred to as mannequin in this advertisement, displayed the latest English fashion, including night clothes. Women could either pay 2 shillings to view it at the dressmaker's shop or 7 shillings to have the doll brought to them. This is not the exact doll described in the journal, but it may look very similar to the one that was mentioned in the advertisement. This practice evidently continued even after the colonies gained independence following the Revolutionary War. Dolly Madison's younger sister, Anne Payne, received a letter in 1796 from her friend Sally McKean, in which Sally recounts going to view a doll dressed in the latest English fashions. Based on her description of the doll's clothing, I think it's possible that the doll was dressed in some variation of the robe à la polonaise, shown here, but I'm not completely sure, as the style of dress generally predates the 1790s. Sometimes, though, the American colonies were behind in the latest fashions due to the geographical distance between the colonies and continental Europe, and the amount of time it took for news to cross the Atlantic Ocean. It's important to note that the distinction between dolls for play and dolls for display was often blurred during this period. Fashion dolls and toy dolls often looked similar and sometimes were one and the same, and there are clear reasons why. Dolls served as instructional objects that taught girls how to dress like proper young women, and girls learned how to sew by making clothes for their dolls. Thus, dolls not only advertised fashion trends to adult women, but to children as well. Additionally, once women finished using their fashion dolls for sartorial purposes, they would sometimes give the dolls to their children as playthings. 18th century portraits of young girls often included dolls dressed in miniature high fashion ensembles. One of the purposes of including dolls in these portraits was to communicate wealth and social status of the family. For example, Charles Wilson Peele's portrait of 6-year-old Anne Proctor shows the young Baltimore resident holding a Queen Anne style doll. The painting is part of the collection of the Hammond Harwood House Museum in Maryland, which also has the original doll in its collection that's shown in the painting. While the paint on her face has faded and flaked off for the course of 235 years, she's still in very good condition. Portrait artist John Wollaston featured dolls in several of his portraits of young girls from the American colonies, including the one on the right of Virginia resident Mary Lightfoot from around 1757, which is in the DAR collection. The paintings depict 3 children from 3 separate households, yet they all appear, at least in my opinion, to be holding the exact same doll in the same gold robe à la Française, which leads me to theorize that the doll was a prop supplied by the painter. And perhaps in the event that a family did not own a luxury doll that their daughter could pose with, the painters would supply one. This doll, which is in the collection of Revolutionary Spaces in Boston, was brought over the Atlantic on a tea ship and purchased by a woman named Polly Sumner Williams on the day of the Boston Tea Party. Her husband, John Williams, is believed to have participated in dumping tea in the Boston Harbor, although his involvement is unconfirmed. The doll eventually became known by her original owner's name, Polly Sumner, and her close contact with such a significant historical event inspired historian Richard C. Wiggin to write a children's book in 2023 titled Polly Sumner, Witness to the Boston Tea Party, which describes the events of December 16, 1773 from Polly the doll's perspective. After the Revolutionary War, dolls continued to be representatives of high fashion in both England and America. An example of this commonplace association of dolls with fashion is a British satirical cartoon by Isaac Cruikshank from 1793 that mocks the pregnant style silhouette that had become fashionable for women to portray regardless of their actual pregnancy status. The cartoon includes a young girl at the far left carrying a doll wearing a dress that mimics those worn by the girl and the women around them. So clearly, Cruikshank did not think that his commentary on fashion trends was complete without referencing the role that dolls play in perpetuating popular trends. I'm going to jump ahead now a few decades to the American Civil War, during which dolls took on a role in fundraising efforts for the Union Army. Doll auctions during the Civil War frequently occurred at fundraising fairs hosted by the United States Sanitary Commission in various major cities, such as the one depicted here in Chicago. The proceeds from these sanitary fairs went to supporting sick and wounded Union soldiers. Sometimes organized groups of women created extensive wardrobes for these dolls, thus using their sewing skills to communicate their values and their support of the Union. The doll on the left is part of the DAR exhibition and is featured in the exhibition catalog for Sewn in America. The doll's owner claimed that the original owner won the doll at a fair in Lexington, Massachusetts in 1857. However, according to the DAR, the style of dress suggests that the doll is probably from the 1860s. So it's possible that she was actually won at a sanitary fair, perhaps the 1863 fair that took place in Lowell, Massachusetts, as opposed to Lexington, Massachusetts. We may never know for sure, but she is certainly a good example of a fashion doll from this period. Meanwhile, the doll on the right from the Brooklyn Museum is confirmed to be a doll that was sold at the Brooklyn and Long Island Sanitary Fair in 1864. The doll's garments were created by a local dressmaker named Eliza Lefferts. According to the museum, the doll's wardrobe is representative of that of a typical upper middle class woman from that time. Dolls auctioned at sanitary fairs were often called Flora McFlimsy, after a poem by William Allen Butler called Nothing to Wear. The poem details the woes of a woman who feels that she never has anything to wear despite her excessive shopping habits. The term Flora McFlimsy became a nickname for fashionable women and soon developed an association with fashion dolls. The Flora McFlimsy dolls of the Civil War period even inspired a popular 20th century book series. Between 1949 and 1972, Mariana Foster Curtis published a series of 8 commercially successful children's books about a doll named Flora McFlimsy. The books then inspired several iterations of Flora McFlimsy themed dolls during the 20th and 21st centuries by American doll company Madame Alexander, and the version I'm showing here is from 2006. A notable sanitary fair doll is Rose Percy, a poured wax doll from England that was auctioned off at the New York Sanitary Fair in 1864. While Rose had her own name, her extensive wardrobe definitely qualified her as a Flora McFlimsy doll. The creation of Rose's garments was the result of a 2-year-long project conducted by students at a finishing school run by Sarah Ogden Hoffman. The female students made the clothing and accessories from materials donated by Arnold Constable & Co. and C.G. Gunther, forming a luxurious miniature wardrobe that outfitted the dolls for all occasions and weather conditions. Her clothes were made from high-end materials like ermine, silk, and kid leather. Her accessories included a tiny fan from China and several pieces of miniature jewelry from Tiffany & Co. Rose was auctioned off several times following the 1864 fair before she was eventually returned to Hoffman and the students. And her final owner, a former resident of the school, donated Rose and her wardrobe to the American Red Cross Museum here in Washington, D.C. in 1919. The Red Cross put Rose up for auction once again in 2009, and she is now on permanent loan at the Grovian Doll Museum in California. Dolls also appeared in some illustrations from Godey's Ladies book, a popular 19th century women's magazine. The young girl at the center holds up a doll in an attempt to show it to one of the adults. The inclusion of dolls in these fashion illustrations underscores, just like in the Cruikshank illustration, this ubiquitous association between dolls, fashion, and girlhood. Toward the turn of the 19th century, dolls continued to influence and reflect current fashion for women and for girls. This whimsical photograph from the DAR collection depicts 2 sisters from Pennsylvania, Wilhelmina and Anna Scorley, with their dog. Anna is wearing a plaid dress and carries a large doll wearing an identical dress in the same fabric. So it's reasonable to assume that either the doll's dress was made to match Anna's dress was made to match the doll, or perhaps both dresses were created at the same time as a matching set. In any case, the photo is a great example of how dolls directly reflected the current fashions. Lastly, I want to talk about a special doll that is featured in the Sewn in America exhibition. This doll, named Miss Hetty, is a China head doll manufactured in Germany or France around 1860, and likely originally belonged to Catherine Giddings of Illinois before she passed it down to her daughter Hazel, who was born in Nebraska in 1890. While the doll itself is from 1860, the clothes are made of 19th century fabric and are distinctly hand-sewn. The crude stitching of the 3 small cotton dresses is that of an inexperienced sewer, suggesting that it was young Hazel who made Miss Hetty's clothes herself, probably as a way to practice her sewing skills. Miss Hetty and her dresses demonstrate how even at the turn of the century, sewing and needlework continued to play a central role in young girls' development, and how dolls were an important tool with which to practice these skills. And with that, I will conclude this brief history of fashion dolls in 18th and 19th century America and the role that they've played in shaping a woman's relationship with dress. If you haven't already, please make sure to visit the Sewn in America exhibition before it closes at the end of the year. Thank you very much.